I'll never forget the look on my mother-in-law's face when my phone rang during Thanksgiving dinner. That tight-lipped smile of disapproval as I excused myself from the table. The eye rolls from my husband's siblings. The whispered comments about unprofessional behavior. They had spent the entire meal mocking my career choices, calling my freelance work just a hobby, and asking when I'd get a real job. But when I walked back into that dining room 5 minutes later, everything changed forever. My name is Ava Mitchell, and I'm 32 years old. For years, I'd been the family disappointment, the creative one who couldn't seem to get her act together in a family of doctors, lawyers, and corporate executives. But that Thanksgiving day, I discovered that success tastes even sweeter when served to those who never believed in you. Have you ever had family members who made you feel small? Who dismissed your dreams because they didn't fit their definition of success? Maybe you've sat at a holiday table, forcing a smile while relatives questioned your life choices, suggesting helpful alternatives to the path you've chosen. If you've ever fantasized about the perfect moment to prove them all wrong, this story might feel familiar. If you enjoy stories about sweet, well-deserved revenge, hit that like button and subscribe to Family Karmic Revenge for more stories about people who got exactly what they deserved. Growing up, Thanksgiving had always been a modest affair, usually just my mom and me sharing a small turkey breast and watching the parade on TV. After my father walked out when I was 8, we made our own traditions, and while our celebrations were small, they were filled with genuine warmth and acceptance. When I married Marcus Harrington 6 years ago, I thought I was finally getting the big, picture-perfect family holiday I'd secretly always wanted. The Harringtons were old money Connecticut, the kind of family with monogrammed hand towels and vacation homes in 3 states. Leonard and Patricia Harrington lived in a sprawling colonial house with perfectly manicured grounds and a 3-car garage that housed vehicles worth more than my entire college education. Marcus was the youngest of 3 children, and in his parents' eyes, the only one who had disappointed them by marrying someone without the right pedigree or professional ambitions. His sister Victoria was a pediatrician married to Daniel, a neurosurgeon. His brother Grant was a partner at a prestigious law firm, married to Felicia, who ran an interior design business that catered exclusively to the wealthy elite of New England. And then there was me, a freelance graphic designer who worked from our modest apartment, taking on projects I was passionate about rather than climbing the corporate ladder. I'd built my client base from nothing, carefully cultivating relationships and delivering work I was genuinely proud of. For the past 6 months, I'd been collaborating with a promising tech startup on a complete rebranding project, work that energized me and could potentially lead to bigger opportunities. But to the Harringtons, none of that mattered. In their world, success had a very specific look: prestigious degrees, corner offices, and 6-figure salaries paid by established companies. Anything else was just playing around. Each year, Thanksgiving at the Harrington house felt less like a family gathering and more like an annual performance review I was destined to fail. The previous year, Leonard had cornered me by the bar and asked if I was still doing that drawing thing, before suggesting his golf buddy could get me an entry-level position at an insurance company. Victoria had helpfully pointed out that the hospital where she worked was hiring administrative assistants. "The benefits are excellent," she'd said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. This year would be different, I told myself as Marcus turned our Honda Civic into his parents' circular driveway. The startup I was working with was on the verge of securing major funding, and if everything went as planned, my role would expand significantly. I'd been checking my email obsessively for days, waiting for news. "Ready?" Marcus asked, turning off the engine. He squeezed my hand, but I could see the tension in his face. He hated these gatherings as much as I did, though he'd never admit it. "As I'll ever be," I replied, taking a deep breath. The driveway was already filled with luxury vehicles: Grant's Tesla, Victoria's BMW, and Leonard's Jaguar. Our aging Honda looked painfully out of place, like a visual representation of how I felt every time I entered the Harrington home. Patricia opened the door before we could ring the bell, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her cashmere sweater probably worth more than our monthly rent. "Marcus, darling," she exclaimed, embracing her son. Then she turned to me, her smile tightening almost imperceptibly. "Ava dear, you look comfortable." I glanced down at my outfit, a burgundy sweater and dark jeans that I'd carefully selected to be both appropriate and true to my style. "Thank you, Patricia. Happy Thanksgiving." "Yes, well, come in before all the heat escapes," she said, ushering us inside. The house smelled of roasting turkey, cinnamon, and wealth, that indefinable scent of expensive candles and furniture polish that seemed to permeate every corner. In the living room, Victoria and Daniel were already holding court, describing their recent medical mission to Guatemala. Grant was on his phone, speaking loudly about a case he was handling, while Felicia arranged flowers in a crystal vase, her twin daughters in matching velvet dresses playing quietly nearby. "Ava," Felicia called, waving me over. Of all the Harringtons, she was the only one who seemed genuinely kind. "Come tell me what you think of these arrangements. I know you have an eye for these things." I gratefully joined her, relieved to have somewhere to belong in this house, where I always felt like an intruder. As we chatted about color combinations and flower placement, I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. I discreetly checked it, a message from Jonah, my contact at the startup, still waiting on investor call. "Will update ASAP." My heart sank a little. I'd been hoping for good news before dinner, something to share when the inevitable career interrogation began. "Everything okay?" Felicia asked, noticing my expression. "Just work," I said, forcing a smile. "A project I'm waiting to hear about." She nodded sympathetically. I remember those days. Before I had established clients, every new project felt like life or death. "Dinner is served," Patricia announced from the doorway, saving me from having to respond. We filed into the dining room, where the massive mahogany table was set with Patricia's heirloom china and sterling silver flatware. Name cards directed us to our seats. I was between Marcus and Felicia, directly across from Patricia and Leonard. The perfect position for maximum scrutiny. Leonard stood at the head of the table, carving knife in hand. "Before we begin, I'd like to say how grateful I am to have my family gathered here today. Another year of achievements and success." He began carving the turkey with surgical precision, distributing slices as he continued his speech about family legacy and the Harrington tradition of excellence. I caught Marcus's eye, and he gave me a small, apologetic smile. As the food was passed around, the conversation turned, as it inevitably did, to work accomplishments. "Victoria, tell us about that new research grant," Leonard prompted. Victoria straightened, clearly pleased to be asked. "Well, the hospital received a $2 million grant for pediatric cancer research, and I've been selected to lead the clinical trials. It's quite an honor." "Wonderful," Patricia beamed. "And Daniel, how's the new wing coming along?" Daniel dabbed his mouth with his napkin. "On schedule. The board voted unanimously to name it after my mentor, Dr. Whitman. The dedication ceremony is next month. You'll all receive invitations, of course." Leonard turned to his eldest son. "I heard your firm landed the Westbrook account." Grant nodded, swirling his wine. "Biggest corporate client this year. I'll be heading the legal team personally." "And Felicia," Patricia added, "your design for the governor's vacation home was featured in Architectural Digest, wasn't it?" Felicia smiled modestly. "Just a small spread, but yes, it's led to several new high-profile clients." I felt my stomach tighten as Patricia's gaze inevitably turned to me. "And Ava, dear, how is your freelancing going?" The way she said freelancing, like it was a made-up word for unemployment, made my cheeks burn. "It's going well," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been working with a tech startup on their complete rebranding. It's been a challenging but rewarding project." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "A startup? Aren't those rather unstable? Most of them fail within the first year, don't they?" "Some do," I acknowledged, "but this one has a solid business model and innovative technology. They're actually waiting on a major funding decision this week." "So you're not actually getting paid yet?" Grant asked, his tone making it clear what he thought of that arrangement. "No, I am being paid," I clarified. "This would just be an expansion of my role if the funding comes through." Leonard grunted. "In my day, you joined a company, put in your time, and worked your way up. None of this gig economy nonsense. No stability in it." "It must be nice, though," Victoria added with a thin smile, "working from home in your pajamas. No real deadlines or pressure." I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to explain that I often worked 14-hour days to meet tight deadlines, that I maintained a professional home office, and that I hadn't worn pajamas during work hours since college. Actually, Marcus interjected, surprising me. Ava works incredibly hard. She's built her client base entirely on her own, without any family connections or advantages. I shot him a grateful look, but Patricia was already dismissing his defense. Of course she works hard, dear. No one's suggesting otherwise. We're just concerned about long-term security, especially if you two are thinking about starting a family soon. She gave me a pointed look that made me want to sink through the floor. Speaking of family, Daniel said, Victoria and I have some news there. All attention immediately shifted to them, and Victoria proudly announced that they were expecting their second child. The table erupted in congratulations, and I used the distraction to check my phone under the table. Still nothing from Jonah. Eva. Patricia's sharp voice cut through my thoughts. Phones at the dinner table, really? I quickly put my phone away. Sorry, I was just checking if there was any news about the project. Well, I'm sure whatever it is can wait until after we've finished our meal, she said with a tight smile. Family time is precious. The conversation moved on to Victoria's pregnancy, Grant's children's private school achievements, and Marcus's recent promotion at his corporate job. The only thing about our life together that seemed to impress his parents. As dessert was being served, Patricia's famous pumpkin pie with homemade whipped cream, Grant turned the conversation back to me. So, Ava, have you ever considered going back to school? Getting an MBA might open some doors for you. I know several good programs that accept older students. At 32, being called an older student stung. But I forced a smile. I've thought about additional education, but right now I'm focused on building my business. Business is a generous term for freelancing, isn't it? Victoria said with a laugh that others around the table echoed. I think what Victoria means. Patricia added, is that a real business has employees, an office, growth potential, stability. I felt tears pricking at the corners of my eyes, but refused to let them fall. Actually, My phone buzzed loudly in my pocket, cutting me off. I hesitated, knowing that checking it would only invite more criticism. For goodness sake, Ava, either turn that thing off or answer it. Leonard barked. That buzzing is driving me crazy. I pulled out my phone and saw Jonah's name on the screen with a text that made my heart race. Call me now. Huge news. I'm sorry, I said, standing up. I need to take this, it's important. More important than Thanksgiving dinner with family? Patricia asked, her voice dripping with disapproval. It's work, I said simply, and walked out of the dining room before anyone could object further. In the hallway, I called Jonah with shaking hands. Ava, he answered immediately, his voice electric with excitement. We got it. The full funding package. $15 million in Series A. My knees felt weak. Are you serious? Dead serious. The investors were blown away by your rebranding presentation. They specifically mentioned how the new visual identity clarified the company's mission. They want you to head the entire creative department. Full-time, 6-figure salary, equity options. The works. I leaned against the wall, dizzy with the news. Jonah? That's incredible. The CEO wants to meet with you Monday to finalize everything. This is huge, Ava. You did this. Your vision sold them on the entire company. After a few more details and congratulations, I hung up, my mind racing. For a moment, I stood in the hallway, processing what had just happened. 6 figures, creative director, equity in a company poised for massive growth. I took a deep breath and walked back into the dining room, where conversation had continued without me. Patricia was the first to notice my return. Well, she said with a tight smile, I hope that was worth interrupting our family dinner. I remained standing, suddenly feeling taller than I ever had in this house. Actually, I said, my voice steady and clear. It was. That was Jonah, my contact at the startup I've been working with. It just secured $15 million in Series A funding. The table fell silent, all eyes turning to me. The investors were particularly impressed with the rebranding work I've done. I continued, unable to keep the pride from my voice. They've offered me the position of creative director with a 6-figure salary and equity in the company. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria's fork froze, halfway to her mouth. Grant stopped mid-sip of his wine. Patricia and Leonard exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. "Well," Leonard finally said, clearing his throat, "that's unexpected." "Congratulations, Ava," Felicia said warmly, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "That's absolutely fantastic news." "Yes," Victoria added, her tone slightly strained. "Congratulations. Creative director sounds impressive." "It is," I confirmed. "I'll be building and leading a team of designers and marketing specialists. The company is projected to triple in size over the next 18 months. "Equity, you said?" Grant asked, suddenly interested. "What percentage?" 2%, I replied, watching his eyebrows rise, "with options for more based on performance metrics." "My goodness," Patricia said, her voice faint. That's wonderful, dear. It seems your freelancing has paid off after all." "It has," I agreed, finally sitting back down. "Sometimes taking the unconventional path leads to unexpected opportunities." Marcus put his arm around my shoulders, beaming with genuine pride. "I always knew you'd make it big," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Your talent was always obvious to anyone paying attention." The pointed comment wasn't lost on his family, who suddenly became very interested in their dessert. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. The dynamic had shifted palpably. Grant asked detailed questions about the startup's business model. Victoria inquired about my creative process. Even Leonard grudgingly admitted that this new economy has some interesting opportunities. As we gathered our coats to leave, Patricia pulled me aside. "Ava, dear," she said, her voice lower than usual, "I hope you know we've always wanted the best for you. We just worried about your security." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without saying something I might regret. "Perhaps," she continued, "you could help Felicia with some branding for her design business. She's been wanting to expand her online presence." And there it was, the ultimate sign of acceptance in the Harrington family. Not congratulations or an apology, but a request to leverage my newly valuable skills for the family benefit. "I'd be happy to recommend some excellent freelancers who specialize in that industry," I replied with a sweet smile. "My schedule will be quite full with my new position." The drive home was quiet at first, both of us processing the evening's events. "I'm sorry," Marcus finally said as we turned onto our street. "For what?" "For not standing up for you more over the years, for letting them treat you that way." I reached over and took his hand. "It's okay. Tonight made up for a lot." "You were amazing," he said, squeezing my fingers. "The look on my father's face when you mentioned the equity stake, I'll treasure that forever." We laughed together, the tension of the day finally breaking. That night, as I lay in bed replaying the events of the day, I thought about all the Thanksgivings I'd endured with the Harringtons, all the subtle digs and not-so-subtle suggestions, all the times I doubted myself because of their judgment. If you're watching this and you've ever had your dreams dismissed or your path questioned by family who just want what's best for you, remember this. No one gets to define success for you. No one else can determine your worth. Sometimes, the people who should support you the most are the ones who understand you the least. But that doesn't mean you have to accept their version of who you should be. In the weeks that followed, my relationship with the Harringtons changed dramatically. Patricia called to invite me to lunch to discuss my career journey. Victoria asked for advice on a hospital rebranding project. Grant inquired about investment opportunities in the tech sector. But the most satisfying moment came 3 months later, at a family dinner where Patricia proudly introduced me to her friends as our daughter-in-law, the creative director, the same title she'd dismissed as unimpressive just months before. Success is the sweetest revenge, but it's even sweeter when you achieve it on your own terms, doing work you genuinely love. If you enjoyed this story of well-deserved vindication, hit that like button and subscribe to Family Karmic Revenge for more stories about people who proved everyone wrong. Share in the comments if you've ever had a moment of sweet revenge against those who doubted you. Sometimes, the best response to people who mock your dreams is simply to make those dreams come true, and make sure they're watching when you do.